We're going to do something a little different as we study for your compound sentence final. You're going to take notes and review using this screencast and see if that helps us stay a little bit better focused. That way you can work at your own pace. You do need to make sure that you're listening to the words that I'm saying because this is the same equivalence of me getting up in front of the class teaching it. I'm going to be explaining some things as we go to clarify errors that were made on the compound sentence practice quiz that we did last week. So the first thing you need to know is what is the job of a coordinating conjunction. So I want you to write it right now and then pause the screencast. When you're done, come back and compare your answer to mine. That'll tell you whether or not you need to study this in preparation for tomorrow. So coordinating conjunction connects two words, phrases, or clauses. One of the big misconceptions last week was a lot of you said that they connect two sentences together. But actually, they're a lot bigger than that. They can connect two words, and I gave the example. Mrs. Culleton and Ms. Habib went to the store and down to the square. So you can combine phrases, words, and sentences or clauses together. You should know your 7 coordinating conjunctions. What I would suggest is you start your quiz by writing the fanboys at the top. And then you know that one begins with an F, A, N, B, O, Y, S. So see if you can go write those and then come back to the screencast and check your answer. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So we use these really as we start looking at types of sentences. So you need to know the formula for a simple sentence, which is just a subject and a verb. And then you need to know the 2 formulas that make a compound sentence. So once you go write those first, come back and check the screencast when you're done to check your answer. One way to make a compound sentence is with a subject and a verb, a comma conjunction in the middle, and then another subject and a verb. And we can't always assume that just seeing that comma conjunction means it's a compound sentence. Sometimes it could be there for a list. So we've got to make sure there's a subject and a verb on both sides. Then to really impress your English teacher, you could switch it up and take out the comma conjunction and use a semicolon. Now you will need to be able to write a sentence that uses a comma and a conjunction on your test with a subject and a verb on both sides. So I said, Mrs. Culleton read a new book and it was her favorite. So I've got a subject and a verb here and then a subject and a verb here. That makes it compound. Now I could rewrite that exact same sentence, but in place of the comma conjunction, I'm going to use a semicolon. Same sentence, same subject and verb, but instead of the comma conjunction, I used a semicolon. And then I want you just to take a second and make sure that you know when we start labeling verbs that you know what your verbs are. Verbs show action. And some of the verbs that don't show action are these things called linking verbs. Sometimes they're helping verbs, but it doesn't matter. Whenever we see them, we know they're always going to be verbs. And those are am, is, are, was, were, be, being, and been. So make sure you know this information for your test tomorrow. Then you'll practice applying it by looking at different types of sentences. So what I'm going to suggest you do is you do a sentence, and then you come back and check the screencast to see how you did. And then you can adjust your process or whatever it is that you're doing to help you as you do the next sentence. So we go through 4 steps. First, we eliminate phrases. Then we circle conjunctions. Then we label the subject and verb. And that helps us decide if the sentence is simple or compound. And then we're tying a little bit of writing into this as well, looking for transitions. So, pause the screencast, go do number 1, and then come back. The crooked streets were made for strangers to get lost in, and we were definitely lost. So I'm going to look for phrases first. I see the preposition for, and to, and in. So I know that a prepositional phrase has to have a noun after it. For strangers is a noun, so that one works. To is not followed by a noun, it's followed by a verb, so I know that's an infinitive, and I'm going to bracket it. And then in doesn't have anything after it. When we see a preposition without a noun, it's an adverb. Either way, I'm now going to ignore all of those things as I label the sentence. So step 2, look for a coordinating conjunction, and I see one right here. and it does have a comma, which makes me think it could be compound. So I'm going to look on both sides for a subject and verb. The crooked streets were made. I know that were is a verb. I'm going to label that, and it actually has two verbs, were made. What were made? The streets were made. Crooked weren't made, and the weren't made. So I'm not going to label those as a subject. It's the streets that were made. Now I'm going to go the other side. We were definitely lost. There's that verb again, were. Who were lost? We were lost. So I've got a subject and a verb on the left, my comma conjunction, another subject and a verb, so I know that this is a compound sentence. Go pause the screencast, try number 2, and then come back to check your answer. We walked for 2 miles straight into the town and turned at the corner of Main and Main streets. I see a preposition for, into, at, and of. For 2 miles straight. Actually, it ends at miles. Miles is the noun, so it's for 2 miles. Into, where's the noun? Into the town is a noun. At the corner is a noun. And of Main. Now, I do see a conjunction here. There's no comma, but it makes me wonder, is there more to this prepositional phrase? Of Main and Main streets, and that makes sense because I didn't get to the noun until I got to the end. So now I look to see if there are any other conjunctions, and I see and, which also doesn't have a comma. So I had 2 ands, neither of them have a comma, so I know right now this is a simple sentence. So I'm going to see if I can figure out the subject and the verb. Sometimes it's easier to find the verb first. I know walked is a verb. I do that every day. Walked. So I'd ask myself, who walked? We walked. There's my subject and verb. I did have a conjunction here. Makes me think there might be 2 verbs. Is there anything else we did? We walked and turned. So there are 2 verbs, but since there's not a subject and a verb on this side of the and, it's not compound. Pause the screencast, go to number 3, and then come back and check your work. The people in the streets walked past us with empty eyes, but I was not afraid. See the preposition in, and past, and with. And that looks like it. So, in what? In the street. Past what? Past us. With what? With eyes, with empty eyes. So there are my phrases. Now I'm going to look for a conjunction, and I see a comma but, which makes me think this could be compound. So I'm going to look on the left. All I have left over here is the people walked. Makes it pretty easy to find the verb for sure, walked. Then I'd ask myself, who walked? Did the walk or did the people walk? And it's the people. The people walked is a subject and a verb on the left side. Let's look on the other side. I was not afraid. Well, there's that verb again, was. Who was not afraid? I was not afraid. Subject and a verb, comma conjunction, another subject and a verb, so I've got a compound sentence. Mayor Tweed was a politician, and lying made him a good politician. So I'm looking at this sentence. I don't see any prepositional phrases, so I'm going to go right to my conjunction. It does have a comma, which makes me think this could be compound. So I'm going to look on the left side. Mayor Tweed was a politician. Was is always, always a verb. Now I'm going to ask, who was a politician? Mayor Tweed. Now both of these work together as a subject because it's a name. We can see they're both capitalized. On the other side, it said lying made him a good politician. Well, I know that made is the verb, and it looks like politician is the subject because that's a noun. But if I think about that, the politician didn't made him a good politician. What made him a good politician? Lying. So don't just assume that any noun in there is going to be your subject. You got to have the subject make sense with the verb. The subject has to be doing that action. But this is compound because I had a subject and a verb, a comma conjunction, and another subject on a verb. Pause the screencast, go try the next one. Theus is looking for a hero. He wants to be freed from his imprisonment on the mountain. So I see for, and I see to, and from, and on. So for, a hero is a noun. To, I know be is a verb, and it looks like to be free, this whole thing acts like the infinitive. From is a preposition, from his imprisonment, and on the mountain. So I'm left with Theus is looking, he wants. Now I don't see a comma conjunction, but I do see this thing called a semicolon. And I know that that's another way to make a compound sentence if I can find a subject and verb on both sides. So I'm going to come over here. Is always a verb, and I know looking is a verb. So who is looking? Theus is looking. Got a subject and a verb on this side. On the other side, I have he wants. Now, remember, because this is an infinitive, it is a verb, but it's not going to be the verb of the sentence because it's already got a job in this phrase. So I'm ignoring all of this. All I have left here is he wants. Wants is the verb. Who wants? He wants. So that makes this compound. The next one. Jim used to live in an orphanage, for both of his parents died. So now I'm going to think of prepositions. I see to, I see in, I see for, and I know that for is one I have to stop and think about, kind of like to and of. So I'm going to look for my phrases. I know of his parents is a prepositional phrase. And in an orphanage. And to live, that's an infinitive. So I'm going to put brackets around it. I'm going to come back to this for. Let's say that I think that this is a prepositional phrase, for both. What I'd be left with is in the sentence is Jim used died. And that doesn't really make sense. I think that this comma for is being used as a conjunction because now I have Jim used to live, for both died. Both is the subject. Both refers to his parents. And what did they both do? They both, died. So that's my verb. On the other side, I have Jim is my subject. What did Jim do? Jim used to live. Now again, to live is an infinitive, so it's not my verb. Used is the verb. But I found a subject and a verb, a comma conjunction, another subject and a verb, so this is a compound sentence. Uncle Edward is not really his uncle, but he rescued Jim from the orphanage to steal from rich people. So I see from and to and from again. So from rich people and from the orphanage. To steal looks like an infinitive, to plus a verb. So now I'm going to go look for a conjunction, and I see comma but, which makes me think this might be compound. Look on the left side. Uncle Edward is not really his uncle. See, that verb is always a verb. So I'd ask myself, who is not really his uncle? Uncle Edward is not really his uncle. But he rescued Jim. Rescued is the verb. That's the action. And I'd ask myself, who rescued? He rescued. So I've got a subject and a verb, comma conjunction, another subject and a verb. This is compound. All right, you're going to do the last three on your own. And then you've got 2 sentences to practice writing. And then there's a Google form for you to fill in. If you don't finish this in class, it is homework. It is a good way to help you study for your test. You don't have any Membean this week, so this is something that you need to do in order to be prepared and do your best job on your test tomorrow.